Okay. This is Heather Usry doing an informative speech for public speaking. This is a close-up of my badge, and these are my audience. Okay. My speech today is about the inception and development of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. The purpose of this speech is just to give you a background and inform you about how St. Jude started. It was the vision of a single man that developed into a global resource for children's pediatric cancer and other catastrophic diseases. The founder of St. Jude was Danny Thomas, and he was a man who believed that no child should die in the dawn of life, and his vision was to create a place where children could receive treatment. Every child could receive treatment despite their circumstances, their ability to pay for it, their race, religion, or any other life circumstances that could otherwise prevent people from seeking treatment for cancer, for pediatric cancer specifically. And now let me tell you a little bit about who Danny Thomas was. Let me begin with his early life. He was born to Lebanese immigrants in Ohio. He was one of 10 children, and like many immigrants in that area, he was born in 1912, and like many immigrants, he wanted to pursue the American dream, and his version of the American dream was to make it big in show business. He pursued show business early on and had a radio show called The Danny Thomas Show, and that evolved into a television show. And early on in his career, when he was struggling and not really finding much success, because he was a devout Catholic, he wanted to pray to a saint, and he chose the patron saint of lost causes, St. Jude. So as he was trying to become successful in his career, he prayed to St. Jude and said, if you will point me in the right direction towards success, then I will build you a shrine. And as he was becoming more successful and he got his radio show evolved into a television show, he did find his success, and his show ran for about 11 years, and at the time, early 40s to 50s, he became a household name. So became very well known and wanted to fulfill his promise and his dream to build a shrine to St. Jude. So that is how St. Jude Children's Research Hospital started. The reason that it's in Memphis is because the bishop who performed his confirmation was originally from Memphis, and suggested that Danny Thomas build St. Jude there just because there was a lack of resources in that area, and the bishop's original parish was in Memphis, so it was kind of personal and special to him as well. So as Danny Thomas was seeking support and funding for St. Jude, he reached out to his fellow Lebanese immigrants because he thought that as immigrants, they would want to support something like St. Jude, and saw that as a way for people who had received gifts of freedom from the United States to give back and honor their freedom that they had received and the dreams that they had pursued. And it was a good way to honor their immigrant forefathers. He reached out to his fellow Lebanese community and developed what's called the fundraising arm of St. Jude. It's called ALSAC. It's American Lebanese Syrian Community. I'm probably getting that wrong, but it's ALSAC. And that has become one of the most successful charities in the United States, and they are solely dedicated to St. Jude. When St. Jude was dedicated in the early 60s, when they finished the funding and building of the original hospital, Tennessee was still a pretty segregated area, and St. Jude really led the way in eliminating segregation, especially in the hospital setting, because no patients were denied, and at that time that was a problem. And they kind of insisted that hotels in the area follow their lead if patients were going to be seen at St. Jude, and St. Jude would reimburse patients for housing and they were to stay at the hotels. They insisted that the local area also kind of follow their example. So they did have a hand in decreasing segregation at that time. St. Jude also shares their clinical and scientific breakthroughs globally. So any developments in pediatric cancer that they make there with their clinical trials, they share with the rest of the medical community. And because of that philosophy, the pediatric cancer survival rate has gone from 20% to 80% since St. Jude was dedicated in the early 60s. So additionally, we were actually there when a lot of Ukrainian refugees came from Ukraine a few years ago when a war broke out in their country, and they brought their entire families, as they do. For St. Jude encourages family support, so they provide housing and financial support and food and transportation, and they kind of approach it like a family should only have to care about making sure their child survives and making sure their child lives. They shouldn't have to worry about how they're going to pay for it. A children's cancer diagnosis can really devastate a family financially. According to the National Library of Medicine, an average cost for a children's cancer diagnosis can be $40,000 a year, and that can vary wildly, even with insurance. So to have a place like St. Jude that will accept patients and not bill them is really it's a miracle. Ways that you can, they seek out funding and fundraising, and there's opportunities for individuals as well as corporations to participate in the fundraising. And one of their biggest single day fundraiser is the St. Jude Marathon that happens in early December. And one of the ways that people can participate in that is by running the marathon or volunteering or creating a fundraising team. And when you do, you get the marathon route goes through downtown Memphis, and then it goes through the St. Jude campus. And so something that's really cool is that a lot of the patients and their families come out, and you'll see kids in wheelchairs and in various stages of treatment come out with their IVs and bald heads with their signs, and it's extremely moving. When you do, we've run the St. Jude Marathon. We ran the 5K, not the marathon, but it's as meaningful. And you can create a team to do that with you, and you can get people to support your fundraising team. So here's some of the shirts that we've gotten, some of the St. Jude Hero. They offer you kind of status as a supporter. This was the one from the 20th, I think, marathon that they've had. That was last year. And so that's just, it's a really meaningful and impactful way to participate, and know that you're supporting families who are facing a cancer diagnosis. Another way that you can participate is you can kind of create your own fundraiser. So here is a poster, upside down, that was for a fundraiser that a lot of our friends did while Lila was in treatment. And a lot of the money down here, if you want to get a close-up, Trent, St. Jude, the fundraising team will work with whatever fundraiser that you're having, and they'll provide materials and educational support and things like that. They'll kind of give you a little bit of direction so that it's not just like, so that when you can promote your event or whatever you're doing, you can say that the money is going to St. Jude, and they'll, they kind of, they'll give you legitimate resources so that it actually does. Let's see. That in the opposite direction. Well, now I will tell about our personal story, with our personal story and our experience with St. Jude. My daughter Lila was 9 when she was diagnosed with leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, and she went through several rounds of aggressive treatment for that, and after a relapse we went to St. Jude to have treatment for her to get a bone marrow transplant. And throughout that we were treated by children's pediatric specialists just kind of across the board, and did not end up, it truly is true that patients don't have to come out of pocket for expenses for that. Acute myeloid leukemia is a blood cancer that affects the white blood cells, specifically your neutrophils. And how I explained that to Lila at the time, because she was so young, was that it's as if your blood is a garden and you have a variety of different flowers in your blood, and leukemia is a mutation of a specific flower, and that flower turns into a weed and takes up all the nutrients from all the other flowers so that they are eventually unable to survive. She received a bone marrow transplant at St. Jude, and that was in 2019, and in 2021 she ran the 5K with me, and we actually got to run past her room and could kind of point to it and show that that's where she was. And she is featured on the website and on several commercials as well, and she is currently 3 years out from her transplant. So I can say personally that we are recipients and beneficiaries of the dream and vision of a single person who fulfilled his promise to St. Jude. Without that dedication that he created, our life would be very different. So we are very grateful to be able to say that we have participated in a miracle, and what a legacy for a single man to leave. The end.